Welcome to Dolby Creator Talks. This is a show about how artists use technology to tell their stories, and I'm your host, Glenn Kaiser. Today we're discussing Materialists, the surprise summer hit from A24, which is now streaming on HBO Max. Director Celine Song leaned heavily into sound and music to flesh out the world of the film, so we're happy to bring you this conversation with the team behind the film, including Academy Award-nominated writer, director, and producer Celine Song, Academy Award-nominated composer Daniel Pemberton, re-recording mixer Josh Berger, and re-recording mixer and supervising sound editor Daniel Timmons. This conversation was a live webinar we did with our partners at Sundance Collab, and we're grateful for the opportunity to bring the conversation to you here on Dolby Creator Talks. Now, much of the success of this film was credited to Celine Song's unconventional take on the romantic comedy genre, which surprised me a little at first because it certainly has elements of romantic comedy, but I think it delves into so much more. If you've seen the film, do you consider it to be a rom-com? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. That's exactly where I started today's conversation, by asking writer and director Celine Song how she felt about the rom-com label being applied to her film. Here's Celine.
When it comes to the rom-com as a genre, it really isn't something that I'm thinking about when I'm making the movie. I feel like when I'm making the movie, I wasn't really thinking about how this is going to be seen in terms of genre. I think that it was a little bit more about I was really about the way that I fell in love with these characters, and then of course all of us, including all four of us in here, all of us kind of like falling in love with the story and then the characters and doing everything we can to sort of like make a great movie, and then I feel like, and then they tell you what genre it is, and then you're like, oh, okay. But I think that what's funny about rom-com as a genre is that like it really depends on how you want to think about the genre. I've heard somebody describe Phantom Thread as a rom-com, so it's a kind of a thing where it's really, I know someone, a journalist just told me that, and I was like, I guess in a way. And of course, there's a Shakespearean idea what a comedy is. A comedy is just a story with a happy ending, no matter what actually happens within it. So, and also, it's also true that some of the rom-coms of the past, like, if you were to describe some of Billy Wilder's movies as rom-coms, it's of course going to maybe more strictly, maybe you would consider more a dramedy. So anyway, these are all the things I think about the genre itself, but I think that's something that I feel pretty strongly about is that either way, stories about love and movies about love are often thought of as lighter fare or as a not serious cinema. But I think that my question in response to that is always, well, then why would the matters of the heart, or why would a universal theme and a great mystery like love, why would that be something that isn't worthy of great cinema? And I would love to know what topics that they can think of that is more worthy of cinema than that. So I think, I don't know, that's my relationship to the rom-com as a genre. And as somebody and I also just love rom-coms, the ones that are as, controversially categorized as Phantom Thread, but also I would say like something that's more, or like Pride and Prejudice even, because even that movie is it strictly a rom-com, or would you call it a dramedy? You know what I mean? So, and then in comparison, or like something that's as openly a rom-com as You've Got Mail. So I love the romance as a genre. Yeah.
I love that. I love you invoking Phantom Thread. I mean, I can see rom-com, dark, romantic.
Someone told me it was rom-com, and I'm like, you're right. It is a happy ending.
Yeah. Well, I think this actually leads into what I wanted to talk with you next and actually draw the team in, which is the question of tone, because that's where this starts to become really interesting. And I feel like, certainly in film schools, tone can be one of the trickiest things for a director to navigate. And I feel like in film schools, like, I don't know that really enough attention is played to tone and to the kind of the toolbox that you have as a filmmaker and a storyteller to dictate the tone and to kind of set that expectation for the audience. Because as an audience, we also want to understand what are the rules of the road for this story and how is this story going to be told to me? So I would love for you to talk about kind of, I think you made that sort of just, and again, mild spoiler, but it's the very first scene of the film. I mean, you make that really interesting choice to start the film with the hunter-gatherers, which immediately sets up a really interesting tone. So talk to me about kind of that decision to open the film in the way that you did and what you're trying to do with the tone as you take the audience into this journey with you.
Well, I feel like the main thing was always that it's like, well, every kind of expectation one might have about the tone when they walk into the film, if it's really to leave it out, it's sort of kind of like uh, let go of the expectations. I feel like that's really the feeling about introducing the film that way, because the tone of this film is going to be the one that is going to be set by the rules of the actual film. And that, of course, then is so connected to the way that Daniel Pemberton, Daniel Timmons, and Josh and I were actually working together to actually dictate and form a set of rules, right? That kind of works for this particular film in a very unique way so that we're able to then dictate what the tone is. And I think a part of the reason why I wanted to introduce the film that way is so that every kind of like genre expectation, whatever the performance expectation, everything, I think that all of those things can be sort of like set aside so that we can actually introduce a new language and a specific language for this movie only. And this is where I think that the sound team uh, is like I mean could call the sound in a film crucial or important or oh, I think that doesn't necessarily that doesn't do it justice because I feel like a film is its sound, film is its sound. So I think that in that way, it's like, well, there's no storytelling that can happen without really rigorous approach to sound. And there's so much storytelling that happens. It gets rewritten in the final sound mix, I fully believe. So I think that, this is all to say, like, I think I'm so happy to be having this conversation about tone with the three of them because I know tone is something that we were inventing uniquely for this movie. And only thing that has to happen is that the audience's hand needs to be held tightly as we walk them through um, every single peaks and valleys of this movie, right? And that can only be done in the most imperceptible but central part of the movie, right? That
Yeah.
is sound design,
Yeah.
one thing before, because I want to pass it to the sound team, but one thing I want to say is our DP, Shabir Krishner, who I've made both past lives in this movie with, one of the first things that he said to me in our meeting, which I think of as like such an incredible sign of him being an incredible DP and the love of my life, and we're just gonna, make movies together forever, is that he said, well, the audience can overcome bad image. They cannot overcome bad sound. So I'm making the movie with uh, a DP who knows that sound is not just the important part of a movie, but it's that sound is where the movie is. So anyway, sorry, just pass on.
Well, you are singing my song.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Celine. That's fantastic, and it's part of why we're here and why we do these conversations. Because to your point, like I also think that when people think about great sound design or maybe a big expensive, sometimes they're thinking about Hollywood tentpole movies. And part of what we're here to do is to really spread this notion that like every movie needs to have great. Anytime you're taking the audience on a journey, the sound design is a critical part of that as well as the score. Daniel Timmons, I would love for you to just talk to us about that opening sequence for a minute and the sound design with the hunter gatherers. I love that. I love that opening of the film. That when I saw it with the audience, there was this initial moment of like, what the hell is going on? What am I seeing? But then people kind of started laughing and people got into it, and it was really it was a delightful way to start the film.
Yeah, I mean, like I like to think of the process as discovering kind of the like emotional access points that are available to different audience members at different times. So it's so shocking to have this huge portal that we begin with, where most of the audience is completely lost. But in the black, in the darkness, Celine grabs your hand and you hear footsteps and you realize that you can walk. And we learn to walk together, in the first 30 seconds of the film, and are shown this, incredible image that was, I think, when we get through that journey, which that intro in the black, that if you haven't seen the film, I won't spoil it for you, but we kind of designed it live, and it was like almost like a live performance that we captured um, in the room together. But when you're shown that very first image of the film, it's like you know exactly what to do with it. It's almost too much information to process.
That's great. And obviously, score is a major part of the setting of the tone. Selena, I'm kind of curious, and Daniel Pemberton, jump in here as well. What were your initial conversations with Daniel about what you wanted the music to do? Were there references that you gave Daniel to think about? What was your approach to engaging him in the work?
Okay. Well, what happened was that I think that I showed like Daniel with temp sound and sound mix and everything, showed him like a cut as it kind of was like in the middle of the edit, right? Like not middle, but like I feel like 3/4 into the edit. And I think we just talked about it, and I think Daniel went. And then I think that he started sending me music. That was kind of the process. Yeah, to tell me. Yeah.
True. Half true.
Half true. I knew you were going to say half true. Tell us.
You sent me the script. So I'd met Celine a bunch of times. We just kept bumping into each other during
Oh, yes. Yeah.
the war nonsense. I love Past Lives. I thought Past Lives was such a beautiful, touching film. Like everyone else, it's an amazing piece of cinema. And so Celine was like, "Oh, maybe we could do something one day." And I was like, "Oh yeah, great! I would love that." And it actually happened. So she sent me the script, which was fantastic. It's so great when you get a script that is just straight away. There's like, it's there. You can visualize the movie in your head, and you're just in that story. And what I found with the script was, it was both very exciting, but very kind of intimidating from a music point of view, in that there was really scope to do something different and unusual and unexpected with the score, which is kind of like what I like trying to do, rather than just do what's traditional or what's expected. But there's so many avenues you could go down. It was like, where do I start? What kind of, like, I like having a strong approach and a strong, like, sort of vision to the score, and a sort of sense of direction musically, and a point of view. And so the thing that really stuck out to me was this first scene, because the first scene is so magical and so unexpected, that I originally was like, I want to try and write what I called caveman music, which is probably not the best term for it.
But it's so open. What is caveman music? What does that even mean?
And try and transport that into the world of modern New York dating. So I started writing this stuff, and I tried off trying to start with like sticks and stones and stuff. And it was kind of interesting, but it was kind of one of these things like, this has no kind of real emotional connection. I don't think it's going to be right. So I started writing all these other bits and putting things together and these flutes. And then I think I'd written about 3 or 4, about 4 or 5 pieces. This was just me messing around and chatting to Celine, saying that I've got some ideas. And then I was in New York and I came to see you. That's the first time I saw it. This is the first time I'd seen the movie. So I think I started writing before I saw the movie, and we sat in the edit, and it was kind of a bit scary, because I was like, I've got some things. And you often, when you play your first stuff, it's huge caveats where you're like, if you don't like this, it's fine. It didn't take me very long. Or like, I can do it again. You
were so shy about it. It was not necessary.
But we played
it. Was so good.
And it was great. I was like, shit, this really works. And there was a piece I wasn't even going to give her that I was like, and that's ended up being one of the main pieces, which was it's become sort of Harry and Lucy's dating sort of music, this ambient kind of electronic piece, which was kind of like not within my high concept caveman score. And again, that's just collaboration between everyone, between Celine, Keith, the editor, all of us just playing together and like feeling our way into a film. But we got there at the beginning. We started off quite strong. It was really exciting.
You certainly did. That's fantastic. We have a little clip since Daniel, you're in the hot seat to talk about the score. We have a short clip. This is a scene where Lucy is connecting with one of her clients and discussing what it is that they do and they don't want out of a potential match.
I don't want to date a liberal, and they have to go to church every Sunday. I don't want someone who likes cats. I'm a dog person.
Is a moderate Democrat okay?
Only Republican. I want someone who identifies as a conservative.
Audrey, I don't know if there's a cat-hating, Christian, conservative lesbian in most parts of New York who wants to date a closeted 49-year-old with 3 children. Would you be willing to date someone from Long Island or New Jersey?
I love that scene. Love that scene so much. Daniel Pemberton and Celine, talk to us a little bit about the music in that scene. Kind of, maybe what was that spotting session, Celine, that you had with Daniel? What were your instructions to him? And then Daniel, I'm so intrigued by this sequence. And sort of like, how do you even at the level of what's the instrumentation that you decide to put to a scene like that?
Who's going to go first, me or you, Celine?
Well, I'm just going to say, I feel like I don't have a lot to contribute to this part of the conversation about that clip, because I feel like Daniel sent me that. And then I was like, it's so funny. It's going to the movie as is. It's one of the pieces that I just had no notes on. So I don't know. Daniel, you tell us. Tell us how you came up with something perfect.
Well, it was, I think, an early thing for me is trying to find the palette and the texture of the film, and like I was talking about earlier, is trying to make it feel unique. Like I like every score to feel unique to the movie it's in. So Materialists has a very particular sound, and hopefully that's very different to, I don't know, what Spider-Verse sounds like, or Eddington that comes out next month on A24. And so early on, this kind of like playing, it's like playing around early on, trying to find the limit. Like I find limitations really interesting, and like restricting yourself to a certain number of sounds or a certain type of language. So this kind of weirdly came out of these early like caveman tracks, and I'd taken this kind of like flute sound, and that sounded a bit like bird call, and that was what I really lent into. I like the mixture of this sort of weird bird call, these kind of wooden sticks that I was playing with. And then I was sort of mixing that with something more contemporary, which was the kind of electronic elements, which we're hearing with sort of Harry's World, and then sort of slightly more contemporary bass and drums. And I've got this great drummer. There's this guy called Freddie, who's a different drummer to I normally use, and he has this really interesting feel. And that was very inspiring for me to work off. So we recorded a whole bunch of like performances, which is a different way to me to work normally, but it meant there was more freedom in those performances and more sort of individuality than if I said, just play this. And I sort of built on those, and we kind of all work backwards and forwards. And then you just end up with something that, like, the scene kind of is such, these scenes are so great. I mean, I could watch a whole movie of, I mean,
Yeah. Just the whole Caesar client. But
Yeah.
this is why this story is inspired by the time I worked as a matchmaker for 6 months. And this is why I had to quit being a matchmaker, because it was so fun. Imagine just those scenes, but like all day, right? So there's something amazing about it that I think that I ended up, I mean, that's why I quit after 6 months, because I wasn't writing, because I was having too much fun in my day job. Yeah. Anyway.
Because what you're trying to do is not, you don't want to overplay the comedy. Like these scenes are particularly entertaining, I think. And it's one of these things, I don't want to overplay the comedic aspect of it, but I do want to play the sort of absurdity in some ways of the situation. And it's very hard to talk about music sometimes, because there's a tone, and you just like, I've got to like find what it is that I personally think works on the scene. And I'm not always right. And one of the most interesting things about collaborating with anyone is it's always a discussion. You know, there's a bunch of scenes in this movie where it was nailed in like 2 seconds, and others where we definitely went backwards and forwards a bunch of times, just fine tuning or going back to the drawing board. And what's great with Celine is exactly that. If it's right, she's like, it's right. And if it's not, it's not like, I'm just going to give you notes for the sake of it, which I have had with certain directors.
Of course, yeah.
It's a really lovely collaborative process, because you are just all there to make the film the best it can be.
I feel like something that I know is part of the reason why I was like, I called Daniel about this movie. I was like, I feel like when we're talking about composer, I was like, I met Daniel, and well, as we said, and when we're doing all the releasing our movies, and I feel like something that I know was the reason why I thought Daniel would be the right person for the movie is because he's so funny, Like it's not, but it's like, because the thing about Materialist, it's a funny movie, but without like, like jokes about underwear or something. But it still needs to have it has a very sustained sense of humor throughout. And I just feel like, I don't know, talking to Daniel, Daniel is like on top of being like so brilliant. I feel like you're also really funny as a person too, and as a composer. Your
Didn't like
music's
my music.
funny, you know?
Didn't like
Yeah.
my music. Wait, my
Yeah.
music's funny?
Your
Things
mu-
funny?
It makes, yeah.
What's funny about my music? What's funny about it?
Well,
It's not funny, as a sense of humor.
There you go. I'm really glad that you guys brought this up because it was one of the things I wanted to talk with you about. I mean, Celine, you said that particular sequence Daniel nailed it the first time out, and I'm sure that Daniel always gets it right the first time, but he can't get it right every single time. So I'm kind of curious, Daniel, was there you mentioned that there were a couple of scenes maybe that had a little bit longer gestation period. What were some of the? Can you talk a little bit about? I'm curious about sort of what were the things that didn't work the first time? What did you learn? Kind of how did you have to change tack?
Well, there's this stuff we had at the beginning of the film, which I absolutely loved, and still
I do too.
Still kind of bummed it's not in there. But it changed your way into the movie. So we had this whole thing at the beginning, and it was awesome. It was great, yeah. But it's like if I had the Star Wars music over the beginning of this movie or something, you'd be like, yeah. And but then it's not going to set you up for the story. And it's, that's an interesting thing about this process. You've got to step back and trust the director and trust their vision for the movie. And I'm looking very closely at bits of it, but they're always looking at the big picture. And, we had this thing, and there's a few bits at the beginning, and, they went in, they went out, they went in. Yeah. But I get why they're not in there, and that's all part of the big picture of making a movie. And there are other bits where it's just like, let's fine tune this one little thing to hit this tiny bit here to make it land more sufficiently, or it could just be we've now shortened the sequence. Can you make that piece that's incredibly musical fit again?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm deeply intrigued in that, and we have a clip that we're going to show in a moment that kind of illustrates this. But Celine, to Daniel's point, I think there's some moments in the film that maybe we might have expected score to be in there, but you choose not to play them with score, and you kind of turn to sound design to do that. And so I'm kind of curious for you about your relationship with both of these aspects of the sound arsenal. You've got the sound design on one hand, and then you've got the score, and how you make the decision about what's going to step forward. And obviously, you, as you just said, you loved the music that Daniel kind of had for that opening sequence, but then you made the decision to go in a different direction. So can you talk about that process and kind of how that works and sort of how you make those decisions?
Well, I think that because of the, how would I describe it, except that it's really, really sophisticated piece of music that Daniel brought, and I was in love with it for the whole time. And I think I told you, Daniel, the whole time but I think that the part of the thing that I think that I'm contending with always is that the power of music is no matter, sorry, sometimes what happens is that when there are tough moments in the movie, or like there are moments where it's meant to be something very difficult and emotional the characters are going through, the problem with any music, no matter how dark it is that it is going to provide pleasure. So something that I realized, and I think I actually learned this in this movie, is that, of course, I'm asking Daniel to, it's got to be a really complicated, really emotional, really dark moment. And Daniel will send me something that's really beautiful and dark and very complicated. But the problem that I would kind of run into is always that, well, the audience will still have a little too much fun just because there's music in it. So what happens is that actually to make the audience really confront something or to really feel something emotional in it, what I just realized is that it actually needs to happen. They need to be left in silence, because any kind of music is going to provide, it's just unfortunately the most pleasurable, it's the most holy thing. So it's the most pleasurable thing possible. So I was kind of fighting the problem of like, but this is a moment where it's supposed to be very, very, very difficult intentionally. And I think that without giving anything away, there are some difficult moments in the movie that are that not a single inch of pleasure can be found. And I love those pieces of score that Daniel made for it. And I was like, in my mind, it honestly inspired the edit. And it really inspired the way I think about those scenes. And it even inspired which performances I wanted to include in the film. But then, if it was actually in the mood, in those scenes, the audience, I feel like, was having too much fun. They were feeling too much pleasure in it. And it was the kind of a way to escape the discomfort that I wanted them to feel. So that was usually the problem for it. As for the opening pieces, it was really, again, it's like part of it is like setting the tone of like what kind of in those situations, it's like, well, what kind of a movie is this going to be, and how are we going to introduce the audience to it? And sometimes it's like it was as simple as how sophisticated people who work in sound and people who make music, like Daniel, like I feel like, or all of us, the way that we think about that piece of music, and then of course the way that I wanted the audience to sort of like walk in for the journey, like the propulsion of it. I feel like sometimes I needed to find a way away from the I don't know, something that's like, I don't know. I know I'm sad about it, Daniel. I'm sorry. I have nothing that useful to say except that, yeah, so sometimes it's not right, even though it is in my heart, right, you know. Yeah.
There's definitely a thing where like using less music makes music more powerful when it comes in.
Yeah.
More music you have, the less. It's like, I liken it to eating food. It's like you go to an amazing restaurant that does like I don't know, 8 courses, like these tasting things, right? But you wait for each thing, like each thing you're going to really enjoy. But if it's like, here's 30 things and just eat them as fast as you can, you don't enjoy any of it. And that space is very important, I think, for like also setting the tempo of a film and putting the audience, you know, if you give the audience too much music early on, and you take it away, it then really drags things. And but also, if the music is too much for shorthand, it can make people not think or really engage with a scene. If you play a scene and you play, let's say they're falling in love music in it, you just hear this music and you're like, oh, I know what's happening here. I don't actually have to think about this scene anymore because the music's telling me this is what's happening. So you don't necessarily engage with it the same way. And sometimes it can be really helpful because it can really highlight a scene or make it more powerful, but sometimes you can make it less powerful because the audience is not engaged in the same way, and that's part of this whole process of us all working out what's going to make the most powerful and emotional connection with the audience.
Absolutely, and you guys are setting up the next clip so well. But before we jump into that, I want to bring Josh and Daniel back into the conversation. So there are a lot of moments, as I said, in the film that, might have been scored by a different director working in a different style and a different approach. But it's really just a matter of very simple sound design. And then some of the cleanest dialogue I have heard. I made a note to myself when I was screening the film, the dialogue in this movie sounds so good. So first of all, kudos and a shout out to your production sound mixer, who I think must have done a fantastic job working with you on location to get sound. But Josh, I would love for you to, I think it's a dirty little secret in our part of the business that sometimes it's the mixer's job is easier if there's a lot of music and a lot of big sound design and explosions and things to cover up bad production tracks. But you're left sitting there with nothing to hide behind, just the production track. So talk to me a little bit about the mix and the dialogue that you came in and how. So, and just for everybody to understand, so Josh Berger is the re-recording mixer who is in charge of the music and the dialogue, and then Daniel Timmons was the supervising sound editor, and then also was the mixer for the sound effects.
Shooting in New York is always hard because of all the obstacles of just you're shooting on the street and there's always loud cars and things going by. And the beauty of this film is in its silence or in its, the quieter moments. And so it's like, it's really awesome to play really loud and fun to play, at 10 and 11 when you're in a rock band and everything sounds great. But it's also really hard to play, really quiet. And so I found that we spent a lot of time in these quiet moments adding, small subtleties, in the trailer, there's the scene where they are out by the loading dock, and just the subtle wind in her hair. We added all these kind of smaller textures to help the viewer just lean in just enough so that when we get intimate with the characters, the viewer is right there with them, and whether it's cleaning up the dialogue or whether it's adding the subtlety of a shoe scrape, certain things like that, we agonized over a lot of that stuff because of how important it is and how important it makes the whole impression of a scene feel to a viewer. And just when we add music on top of that, that's the icing on the cake. And just to speak to some more of the technical aspects of it too, using Atmos on a film like this, exactly, Glenn, you were talking about how it's great in like a superhero movie to have things flying around your head, but this is the real pleasure of using Atmos is when you use it for spatialization, and you don't just use it for everything going there all the time, but how again to draw the viewer in, and then in the moment when she's again interviewing or Lucy's doing all her interviews, that's when we can have the music big and wide and kind of in more of an Atmos space, but then using that to again tell the story in a way to help shape that narrative. When you can go quiet and go big, it's not always just all big or all quiet. And again, alluding to that first kind of moments in the theater when you sit in that very dark theater and you start to hear a little bit of something coming from the left surrounding, you hear a little bit from the right, and as the image kind of opens up, so does the sound as well. And being able to do that and use to work with Celine to unbelievably create this environment and draw everybody in, and whether it's doing it through visuals and sound, we're all doing it together to create this, and it's all saying the same thing. A lot of the times, what we're saying is things feel so perfect. We don't want to change too much of it because it already came into us being so amazing that we just tried to finesse things in a way that was always doing the right thing for the story at the right time.
Yeah.
I just want to say, if I can, quick, Josh, it was such a joy working with you. Josh works on such a discreet and like incredibly microscopic level with the audio that it's just, I don't know, if we were all like doing something together besides filmmaking, we'd be like driving a rallycross car, and like I would be shouting out, I would be like reading the map and shouting out directions, and Josh would be adjusting the AC, and on a good day Celine would have the hair, the wind blowing and her hair out the window or something.
So romantic.
Something like that. But just to hear Josh talk about the way he mixes the dialogue on a technical level was just fascinating to me, because you're thinking about compression in all three dimensions and the way that you're hitting the gain and levels and everything. I've never really actually encountered anything quite like that, and it came out so crystalline. It's like
yeah.
And I'm glad it made it to the final viewers too. I mean, a movie like this that it's in the script. You got to make sure that everything is heard, and using the dynamics and the balance of everything. And again, big shout out to the production sound mixers who spent so much time, making sure that we got exactly what we needed and went above and beyond. And when they do that, it's just amazing for us to be able to uncover that stuff and use it. And a lot of times people don't know, or mixers or things get lost in translation. And luckily they came to the mix one day. It was great having them, and to keep that direct line between, post and production from a sound perspective is incredible. And I hope we can do that more.
It is.
Just to shout out, Dimitri Curie is our on-set, and then his whole team. I think everybody would agree that he's probably the best New York sound mixer, on-set sound mixer. And I worked with him on Past Lives, and I got to work with him on this, and him and his whole team, Dan Green, our boom op, and everybody's so good. I just wanted to do a credit.
I'm kind of obsessed with this clip that's out on YouTube, some paparazzi clip or something, where you can see their 40-foot boom pole with like an articulating thing out there on the street in New York. And it's like, oh, that's how you do that. You have mastery over your domain.
Funny paparazzi, like just sound team shots. So I'm not the actor. Just, wow, look at this mic rig.
Oh yeah,
more of that, please.
Yeah.
That sounds like something I would watch.
Bowling out of a bar with a Zoom H4 recorder.
Since since you guys brought this up, I mean, obviously the dialogue is so important, and we will run this clip, I promise, because it's Josh, you set this up perfectly. We have the loading dock clip, so I want to play a little bit of that. But Celine, can you talk about like what's your relationship with the production sound mixer on set, and especially because we have so many like directors who are kind of maybe probably early on in their creative journeys here, like. Talk about the process because it's so important to get good, clean production recordings. And especially as Josh said, you're on the street in New York City. Like it is a challenging environment. So talk about your process of working with your production sound mixer on trying to get as clean a recordings of that dialogue as you possibly can.
Well, I think that it can be so easy to have such a. I think that there are a lot of amazing, very talented and very technically talented sound mixers in New York City and all around the world. But I think what's so unique about Dimitri is also like he would also be a personality hire. He's just like an amazing person. And because sound is something that is so close to the first team and then the second team, like sound is something that they have to deal with talent. So part of it is like them being like just lovely, wonderful people to have on set. It's just like, and his whole team, Dan and Sam, like all of them, like I think that the thing is like that part of it is something that I think we talk about enough because they have to touch the actors and like, every day. So that rapport, being able to build that rapport is such a important and a powerful thing. So there's one level of that. But also the other thing is like, for me, Dimitri and I are really creatively involved. And I think that it's not something where I think about it as like a technical part of the filmmaking, but as like, he is part of all the creative conversations. And our boom op, Dan Green, he will always be a part of like me and my script supervisor and my DP and my AD talking through every shot. So he would just be there and he will listen to all of it. So part of it really is about, I think as a, or like early career, or I just made my second film. Something that I know is true is that you can give access to people if you care about what their job is for your movie. So for me, it's like I want my sound team on set to be as close to the creative as possible because I know that it's eventually going to end up in Daniel and Josh's desk. And then eventually we get to do amazing things with it because sound is one of those departments because it's not something you can see on a monitor. Like people really think that is, they're often seen as a source of annoyance. I learned this from, them telling me the experiences. But I feel like, so when they're like, well, it's funny because for camera and lighting, everybody feels very comfortable spending an hour lighting it and setting up the camera. But when it comes to sound, the sound is like, can I have 20 seconds? And people are like, oh, sound doing that again, So to me, it's about developing a culture where sound is treated with the equal amount of respect as a picture. And that's something that has to come from the director, right? Because if the director, when the sound is saying, I need 20 seconds, the director is not rolling their eyes and nobody in the crew will either. Right. And then what also that allows it to happen is that then Dimitri feels comfortable talking to my first AD and all of us that he does need 2 seconds just for that extra good sound, right? Or like he does want a little bit here, want a little bit here. So then he can start to ask us for more time earlier. So in that way, we can just get as much as we can. And that has to come from me and also, my amazing first AD, Ben. Like, we're all actually talking about, like, no, Dimitri is not a lesser team. His team is not lesser of a team than Chabier's. And of course, Chabier would never treat Dimitri like that either. Chabier is always like, Dan, come here so you know what shot it is exactly so that we're then able to, so that he can operate the boom correctly, right? In a way that's going to be amazing, So it really is about yourself setting the culture that sound matters on set. And then, of course, we're going to reap the benefits of it when I'm sitting in the final mix with Josh and Dan, right? Because we're sitting there, we're like, oh my God, oh, he got the birds over there and he got the sound of the car going over there. We can fix it now. There's so many things that we're able to get because Dimitri is being supported creatively,
Celine, I think the fact that you see that you don't see that 20 seconds for sound on set as an inefficiency says so much because
No, of course.
it's
Again,
it's
you
what
know.
Very
it
much
is.
so. Matt, props to you for giving the sound team the resources they need to do their job properly. Marcus, let's play this clip. This is John and Lucy on the loading dock, and just pay attention to the quality of the dialogue and also what's happening with the sound effects, given the conversation that we just had.
Definitely didn't expect to run into you tonight.
I missed you.
Yeah. You don't even remember my face.
Got it. Your turn.
You seeing anyone?
Amazing work. Daniel Timmons, I feel like I made a note to myself in the screening on that particular scene. Like, I almost feel like you're using ambient sounds and traffic as score in that moment, because of course there's no music in there. So talk to me a little bit about the approach to a sequence like that, and kind of building, how are you subtly working in tonal elements and emotional, things to communicate emotion in a scene like that doesn't necessarily have score.
Mm. Well, it wasn't, predetermined really, but we did gather all the elements to play with in advance. But this scene was definitely composed collaboratively in the room with everybody. And I think even the picture editors, Keith and assistant Shannon, were there with us too, and did a great job of teeing things up for us. But it was a on the spot, custom real-time creation that we did, but certainly inspired by living in New York for 15 years now and knowing the city and just loving the city as a place that responds to you on a really deep, immediate level. And can, on a night like this where these two people meet in this kind of setting, that's where I don't know, you can feel like you're a part of, it's almost like you're in a jungle or you're part of a living, the city's just an extension of your consciousness. So that was our inspiration for creating this. Maybe the cars or the river and the voices and police or the birds, and that's the kind of direction that we received on this. Unfortunately, I think the clip stops a little bit short of the really cool sound design moment that I'm really proud of, that I think was really fun to create in real time, because we did a couple passes and a couple shots at it, and I think the real fun in exploring Celine scenes is that the portal moments or the landmark moments are not always what you'd expect, and time is traveling. They're captured in such a different speed in her films that it can be deceptive if you don't know exactly where to look. So Celine lets us know exactly where those are, and we're responsible for everything in between. So I unfortunately can't show the rest of the clip, but we had a lot of fun making it.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's like I think it does come from how my background is. I was in theater for 10 years, and something that I know is true about sound. The sound is because you can't move your camera in a play. It's just one stage, and we're all looking at it. It's all a wide, So to pull focus, one of the main ways that you pull focus on an object or a person or something like that is through sound. So I feel like that. So I feel like knowing how to tell the audience where to look based on sound is something that I feel like I had 10 years of experience doing, in a way. Because was something the first thing you learn in theater school is that, the footsteps, and what kind of shoes and how the footsteps approach the stage before that person enters the stage. That actually is such a huge part of both subtle and pretty overt way of telling the story. As in, like, like, when does the actor stop sneaking and then starts stepping so that the audience can hear that somebody's coming, right? which is
Yeah.
like, it's like in Shakespeare or whatever. So it's kind of like, so to me, it's like, it's so much of it is about like, Dan, Josh, and I, like, we're just trying to figure out like, how do we pull focus in a way where um, no one can even know that we're there. Something that we talk about a lot is being imperceptible as
Yeah.
sound design, right? As in, like, I don't want anybody to know that we added that little car driving by. Like it's like you kind of want
Yeah.
it to seem like the cars just driving by. Sound designers were never here, like even though we were there, like
Well, yeah,
we were
that's
really
the goal.
there.
The goal is you want it to sound like that's just what you captured on set when you were rolling the
Oh
camera.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm
It's like
so one of my favorite sound design elements in this movie, and I feel like we could just teach a masterclass on this, is how you're using sound design to capture this notion of class and control over environment. And to me, that was so clearly articulated in the different ways that Harry's $12 million apartment sounded from John's $800 a month apartment. And I would love for you, I mean, I want to open up to questions. So I'm going to wrap up very quickly, but I would love for you just to spend a second talking about the contrasting sounds between those two kinds of environments and what you were doing from a sound design perspective to kind of communicate a thematic point.
Yeah, well, I've only lived in one of those types of apartments, and I'll leave it up to the audience to guess which one.
you and us both, you and us all.
But certainly, it's just an extension of that concept of nature, which I think we opened the film with too. Is the BQE is just a raging river, maybe in John's apartment, and it's yeah, what a fun scene. I wish we could show that today. But I did do a little bit of research on, the Harry type of apartment. My wife is an art appraiser, so she goes into these kind of high rises on the regular. And so it's a different type of life. I think he's hermetically sealed away, and it's almost it's a different type of trance that we go into in Harry's world. We're removed from the world, in some ways. In his bedroom. The sheets, we had a lot of fun making the sheets.
Yeah. Well, I think Daniel sent me I feel like you're the one who sent me the article about how the rich can afford silence in New York City. It was one of the first things that because we're talking about exactly this, of how to create the soundscape for Harry's apartment and how to create it for John's. And of course, we have a pretty direct cut from Harry's apartment, Lucy and Harry in bed, and then to John's apartment. And of course, the thing that we were working on the most is like, well, what's amazing about getting to live in a Tribeca apartment that's $12 million is that you can afford white noise. You can afford the city to be a beautiful, silence. And then I feel like, yeah, Daniel, I forget what article it was, but you sent me that article to be like, hey, there was like a whole article about how the rich part of what rich people are paying for when they buy an apartment is the silence in New York City.
Yeah, the relationship is almost inverted when you have that kind of apartment, because you can look out on the city and appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, it's like a beautiful picture. It's like a silent picture.
Right
But
under your
meanwhile,
own
when
fish
we,
tank.
and then when we cut to John's, and immediately we're like, the windows are closed, but but I've of course seen and lived in those apartments. Those are most of the apartments that I've been to, and it's always so crazy because you're like, how is it that, like, if the garbage truck is showing up, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, oh,
And it's
there's
so loud. It's like it's
it
right
is
here in
so
the apartment with you.
loud. Oh yeah,
My,
it's
my
like kind
favorite
of
one is water pressure in rich people's houses. I've been in fancy houses.
quiet. You mean?
Oh, the bath fills in 2 seconds. I'm like, damn, rich people's baths fill really fast.
That's great.
Erica, I could keep going on for another hour on this, but I do want to, we've got such a great audience and I want to open up some time for questions. So I will hand it back to you. Let's go to the Q&A part, please.
Absolutely. And thank you, Glenn, for such a wonderful conversation. This has been great. And we do, in fact, have many questions from the audience. So I will get us started with one. We're not going to get to all 70, unfortunately, but we will do our best. First question is from Devin. And this is a question for Josh and Daniel Timmons. I just watched Materialists for the second time yesterday and was struck by how masterful the sound design is, especially during the confrontation scene between Lucy and Sophie. The New York sonic atmosphere is so well done. how do you balance the cacophony of honking horns, shifting grates, rustling wind, and chipping birds with the actual dialogue of the scene? Is there a moment where, it's just right, or is it kind of a game of adding and removing sounds until it's perfect?
We didn't add too much, I think, to that scene, and some of those birds are the real birds of the city. I think the one thing that I did want to add was the sound of the construction site right behind them, and the chipping away of the facade, if you will, which is what happens. And I think for me, that's what happens in that scene. So it was fun to find where that could support the scene and lay in that subtle threshold that we had set up for the rest of the film too, and kind of fit to our own rules was the challenge for me there. And the footsteps walking away, we definitely spent a bunch of time on, probably the pinnacle of the footstep storytelling in the film that we spent so much time on and had so much fun with.
So fun. So much like character work with the footsteps. We're like, this is what we want. We were like, I don't know. I feel like we had such theories about the footsteps.
I feel like we were just playing with dolls for the whole time.
Clap, clap, clap.
Yeah. And to just touch on like the level of dynamic range like in Josh's dialogue mixing was like such an inspiration for how much we could do with the feet too, because there's range in there too. There's a ton of dynamic range for even like when the character's a foot away versus half a foot away. It was very fun to explore.
I would only add that just to say that, we're not just putting things in there just to put it in there to fill out the space. I think a lot of what Dan brought and Dan's team that, we're trying to add things that will help tell the story at that right time through sound. It's what they're saying is so emotional. And at that point in the film too, we know we're in New York. So we want to add things that are going to, add tension, release tension, and where to place them around certain lines of dialogue to help kind of punctuate things. All of that stuff is intentional. And I think that, when you take a step back, you see it as New York, but under a bit of a microscope, we're doing it on purpose. We're not just like putting stuff together to hope that it kind of helps tell the story. It's very, very impactful where certain things are, and the placement, even if it is like, kind of more of a car horn, but like, where does it start? Where does it stop? How does it, impact the next line of dialogue or where they are in their conversation? So it's just a lot of thought goes into that stuff.
And to have as much time as we did and resources to work on that level was great. And to have you, Celine, like so, closely involved with the process, I feel like we left no footstep unturned, if you will. Like
Not a single one.
I truly feel like
single one.
We looked at I think I had like 3 de-essers on my footstep chain, so we could just maximize.
Yeah, Daniel, but didn't you have a dream about footsteps? Didn't you? Am I crazy? Did you tell me?
For several days on end.
I think Timmons had a whole. I think you had a whole. You texted me. I think you were like, I have dreams about the footsteps.
Usually there's one. I just like I move it this way and I can't. And it's too late, but I move it this way and it's too early. And there's no more room. But we found it. We found it in real life.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Our next question is for Daniel Pemberton. Your composition career spans so many genres, including films like Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, Ocean's 8, and of course, most recently, Materialist and Eddington. When you're approaching a film score, what are the most important factors to find an appropriate score for that film? And how do you keep each score feeling unique and varied compared to your other compositions?
I mean, that's one of the most fun things about like my job is like each time you're entering a new world, and I liken it a bit to like starting a new band. It's like if you're in a band, you kind of have to do the same thing each album, and you have to kind of find your sound and keep doing it. But I like each film is like a new band. The Materialist band is a great band, by the way. I enjoy the vibe of the Materialists band, and I don't know. First of all, it's like I try and choose projects that I feel I can be creative and I can work with creative people. And so I generally don't do big blockbuster movies if they're like franchises or sequels, because there's not the ability to be creative in there. And for me, that's the most exciting thing about filmmaking. It's like, can you be creative and can you bring your own personality and individuality to a movie. And, you know, working with Celine is fantastic because straight away there's a respect. They're not being like, hey, I really like the music to Spider-Verse. Can you do the Spider-Verse score to my movie?
Imagine.
Would it be, I don't know, it'd be kind of exciting.
It'd be weird. Because I'm obsessed with that score. And then also, but then, yeah, it's like just being like, yeah, that basically that, because I love it so much, you know, totally different movie, but yeah.
But it's that thing of someone saying, I trust you, like, to go and explore and find what the approach is. I mean, I did a thing years ago with Aaron Sorkin and this film Molly's Game, and his first thing was like, I want a big orchestral score. And I was like, I'm not doing that. You want an electronic score because I think that's what's right. And if it's wrong, then I'll give you a big orchestral score. But I think what you want is a contemporary electronic score. And he was, again, it's a great relationship where he said, okay, I trust you. Go ahead and do it. And I was always like, if it's wrong, we go a different route. But it's like you got a gut response and you've got to kind of work your way of like, how do you tell this story and how do you capture the emotion? I've got a movie coming up, that's secret at the moment, down the line. And it's so over the top with the emotion. It's kind of fun because I'll be able to write emotion that is so ridiculously like, da-da. And I'm enjoying that. But on this movie, I'd never want to do that. It would destroy all the performances. You've got this very nuanced performances, beautiful script, beautiful dialogue as well. I think another thing is knowing what you're serving in the picture as well. So, you know, Celine's writing is so like beautiful. You don't want to step on it. And so you need to write a score that gives it that space. And that's part of your mindset going in of being like, okay, I need to find the kind of language that will allow these performances to breathe, that will allow the dialogue to sort of flourish. And all those things, you know, push you into a different route. And choosing different movies that aren't the same thing over and over again means you're always having those challenges. And so you're not resorting to just doing the same thing over and over again. I mean, if they made like, after the big box office smash of Materialists, I'm sure lots of people are going to make like Materialist knockoffs, but I won't do them. And they'll be like, just give us the Materialist score again. We want that.
But they'll use your music as a template for their director's cut.
At least Materials has been a hit. The worst one is when I've had things, let's say, haven't been as successful. And then my music's been ripped off of things that have been more successful. And everyone goes, that's brilliant. Someone literally beat me an award recently for a score that was kind of ripped off of my score.
Oh.
Fine.
Daniel, what is that story?
I'll tell you something.
Celine, this next question is for you from Tim, who asks, how early do you start thinking about music in your films? Are you thinking through that process as you're writing? And at what point in the process do you start working with the composer?
As soon as the script is, honestly, as a script is being written in this movie, I think that there was already needle drops written into the script. So I already thought about what kind of songs will play. But then I think that as soon as the script is done, I'm thinking about what kind of sound and what kind of composition. But I feel, and then of course, because of how much I think about sound design as part of storytelling, I already kind of have an idea when I'm writing the script for how the soundscape will get put together. And sometimes it will be something as simple as like, I know that this particular sound coming in is going to be what leads to the next cut, for example. So I feel like, so I think it happens as I'm writing it. And then of course, it gets actual, I talk about sound during prep as well. Yeah. Damn,
Awesome.
I thought you were on too, Yeah.
This next question is for Daniel Timmons and Josh from Devon, who asked, there are so many moments in Materialists where sound builds narrative bridges. I absolutely love the L cut of the passing truck that moves us from the confrontation scene with Lucy and Sophie to Lucy, among other cuts. We won't mention all of them because we don't want to spoil anything. But were those bridges written into the script, or were they a result of collaboration during post-production? And then one more bonus question. Do you have a favorite sound moment from the film, and what is it?
I love that moment too. I think I think there's maybe three moments that that echo that moment as well in the film that we took as opportunities to kind of just solidify um, Lucy is the center of gravity and everything in the movie. So for me, that moment when the truck passes by and we move into her apartment is an opportunity to be alone and be her, and just be completely alone with those emotions that she's feeling. So that was my inspiration for that moment. That's one of my favorite sound moments in the film, I think too. Celine, was it written into the script or did we create that on the fly?
Well, I feel like I mean, we know what the emotion is, but you created that. I remember you literally showing it to me, being like, I did something. Listen. And I was like, okay. And then I listened, I was like, yo, it's so cool. But I feel like, yeah, I think it's one of the ones that there'll just be moments where like Daniel will be like, I did something, you might hate it. I'm gonna show you. And then I listen and I'm just like, yo. And it's always like amazing, you know?
There's another reaction of yours, Selena. I think I've got two other times in the movie. I think I did some transition with a ring box and something. My first take at the very intro of the film, where your reaction was more like, "Yo, no," and
I was like, yo, no.
which is equally direct and direction that requires zero translation that guided us to the right spot.
Yes, yes, yes.
What I think was really cool too is because Dan, I distinctly remember that moment. That was, it's one of those things that like why I love the mix so much is because we have all of this material and in some way we're seeing the film for the first time. And it's a moment like that when you have the material and it's been doing it a very specific way for such a long time. And there's other projects where people are like, it's been that way, so we got to keep it that way. But what's amazing working with you and working with Celine was that we were all able to kind of approach it from like a fresh perspective. And it's like, well, what if we did this? And then it just magic happens. And you've been living with something for sometimes a year, it being a specific way, and then all of a sudden a subtle change makes a huge difference. And the fact that somebody was able to see that and feel that as an audience member for seeing it for the first time is like, that's amazing. That's what we hope for because of all of this tiny subtlety stuff that we're doing to kind of enhance the moment, by sound. And it's just fantastic.
Yeah.
I just love that collaboration. That's what keeps me going.
It was so alive. It's like every day. Some films, some jobs feel like you're at the butcher shop, and it's like here's your cuts of the meat, and there you go. Then this was a petting zoo. We didn't.
It was like a petting zoo. I mean, what's so great is I feel like something that I know is really real about the final mix. Generally speaking, I think is the first thing that we said, which is that I want to treat the final mix day as if it's a production day, where it's like everything that we get to do there. Everything that we get to discover and find and commit to the mix is all going to be, I mean, in 10 years, if you turn it on, it's all that's going to still be there. So it has to be, so in that way, it's like, yeah, like the 12 hours that we spend in the mix room is just, that's it. Like that's when we get to make the movie. So I feel like that's why we have so much fun because we're treating it like it was production, in a way.
A capture.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we are just about out of time. So before we say goodbye, I just wanted to throw it back to you, Celine. Any favorite sound moment or any favorite moment about the process of working with these guys you want to highlight?
I mean, I feel like just working with them generally. I feel like I had such a wonderful time working on the sound and music for this particular movie. And I think that it's something that I really fought for too. It's something that I have to fight for. And we're talking about post-production budget. Because it's funny about post-production budget, because it's not the first bunch of money that leaves the bank account. So like everybody wants to everybody wants it to be as cheap as possible. But there's a part of it where I have to just fight for it so that we can have the creative space to get to do the writing, because I fully believe that in post-production, the whole movie gets rewritten. So why would you? So I think it was something that I kind of really learned a lot from my first movie, and I really fought for here. And I think that I just feel like every day with the Daniel and Josh, I feel like every day working with them, it was just like, I don't know, it's like always going to be it's like renewing the vows on the movie or something. We all just get to like understand it and love it in a new way. So anyway, sound isn't just a part of movies. I think the sound is the movie,
Many thanks to Sundance Collab for inviting me to moderate this terrific conversation, and to our friends at A24 for those excellent clips. And of course, an extra special thanks to our panelists, Celine, Daniel, Josh, and Daniel, for joining us to discuss their work on the film. Be sure to check out Materialists, now streaming on HBO Max in Dolby Atmos. We'll have links, as always, in our show notes. And if you'd like even more conversations with artists and filmmakers about how they use technology to tell their stories, be sure you're subscribed to Dolby Creator Talks. You can find links to our show on all the major podcasting platforms, including the video version on YouTube, in our show notes. Or you can simply search for Dolby wherever you get your podcasts. If you're curious to know more about what we do at Dolby Creator Lab, head on over to dolbycreatorlab.com. There you'll find information about all of our programs. You can access the entire library of episodes of this show, and you can sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, this is Dolby Creator Talks. I'm your host, Glenn Kaiser. Our producer and editor is Michael Coleman. Our executive producers are Amanda Schneider and Jack Ferry, with additional editing by Matt Nixon. And our production coordinator is Karen Kahn. Thanks for joining us.